welcome to the programme. Well, North Korea is upping the ante. It says it has missiles ready to strike US targets. Threats have been flying in recent weeks after that third nuclear test by Pyongyang and fresh UN sanctions. But how worried should the world be? Is it just a young, untested leader who's trying to flex his military muscle? Well, we're going to be joined by guests in Guam, in Seoul and also in London. And we're going to be returning to Cyprus now the banks are reopened. Is life a little bit easier there? Wherever you're watching around the world, you're more than welcome to join the conversation. We're available across social media. You can get in touch on Facebook, on Twitter, or get in touch via Google+.
People are going to want to know. Let's just say something.
Well, thank you for being with us here on World Have Your Say. We're going to start our conversation with North Korea, but we will, of course, be talking later about Cyprus. If you want to get in touch, all of your messages come to me here on my tablet, so we'll try and include them in our conversation. But first of all, let me introduce you to our guests. June Chang is news anchor at KBS World in Seoul. She joins us on the line now. And also Dr. Stephen Norper, who is Senior Vice President of the Korea Society based in New York. We're also joined, you'll see it in one of the screens there, by our language services who will be looking at conversations around the world about this topic. June, we'll start with you. You're in Seoul. How are people feeling after these comments coming out of North Korea?
Actually, I just finished the evening news a couple hours ago, and I've been on my way home, and I noticed people are out about in society, same as usual. Nothing's really changed. Everyone's going about their daily lives. I feel like a lot of people aren't even fazed by what's going on with the recent rhetoric, the bellicose talk from North Korea becoming more and more severe. People are just sort of numb to what's going on with the North right now.
So do you think this is a sense of theatre? There's no real imminent threat?
Actually, with the recent events, especially after the third nuclear device being detonated by the North, things have been escalating very, very quickly. As for South Koreans being aware of what's going on, I think over the decades, all this talk of North Korea trying to provoke the South has been a little bit too much for the South Koreans to really absorb. So they're not really listening too carefully as to what people are saying in the North. I think what U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said earlier was, you only need to make this mistake once. It only takes one mistake and one wrong move, and a disaster can happen. So people have to be aware. They need to start waking up and being conscious about what's going on around them.
Dr. Stephen Norper, I can see that you're nodding.
Yes. Because there's certainly the potential for mishap. There's certainly a struggle and a crisis in terms of the war of words. It's a serious escalation when you add it to the fact that the military hotlines were cut off this week. And so that's a worrisome development as well, on top of what Joyce mentioned about the nuclear test and the missile test. At the same time, the muted response from Seoul and Washington is designed not to reward the North Koreans for what they're trying to do, which is to attract as much attention as possible.
What about this idea that Kim Jong-un, he's a young man, he's desperately trying to win prestige, try and get people around him in North Korea to respect him, as his father was respected, and maybe this is more about posturing than actually doing anything? June, do you agree with that?
I think there are a lot of unknown factors that are in play right now. We do have a new president in office, President Park Geun-hye. She's the daughter of a former president here. North, with the new leader, he's a very, very young leader. We don't know what his style is like either. Earlier today in Pyongyang, there was a mass rally that was held for an hour and a half. About 1,000 of people came to this rally, and they were chanting over and over again, death to the U.S. imperialists. AP's office in Pyongyang reported about this earlier today. So I think the North's rhetoric of saying the combat readiness posture #1, which is the first time it's been used, Unification Ministry officials have never heard of this, and they're assuming this means that they're at they're assuming their highest level of war readiness. So they're trying to unite North Korea, the people behind its leader. So it could be a show of force in that sense. But with the recent U.S. South Korea joint military drill, the Full Eagle, which has been extended until April 30th, the U.S. has been sending a lot more bigger guns to South Korea to show force that they're really serious. They're trying to send a very, very clear, strong warning to North Korea by sending over B-52 bombers, the B-2 stealth fighters. So North Korea, its response is very, in a sense, predictable in its unpredictable ways.
Is it fair enough, Dr. Norper, that North Korea maybe does feel slightly boxed in? We were discussing this on the BBC World Service World Have Your Say programme a few hours ago, and it was pointed out by the former British charge d'affaires in Pyongyang that it's a very antagonistic move to be flying stealth bombers in the region, even though it is only a military exercise. The US is maybe antagonising Pyongyang.
Well, that's a claim that Pyongyang makes, but the exercise, is a regular thing. The step up in tensions during the time has happened, but not to this degree. And the overflights are really designed to also signal to Seoul the strength of the alliance. And remember, as just been pointed out, you have a new administration in South Korea. You also have Obama too, and you have a new administration in Japan. So North Korea is clearly trying to test all three. There's one other factor that hasn't been mentioned alongside of the domestic consolidation by Kim Jong-un and what we've just said about the new regimes, and that's that North Korea is also trying to signal its displeasure with China for going ahead and backing UN Resolution 2094, and they're concerned about China moving away a bit and maybe more toward the Americans and the South Koreans with the sanctions resolution. So they're trying to express displeasure in this way. It's just a very dangerous game.
June and Dr. Norper, let me bring you this comment which has come into us from Julio in the Philippines on Facebook. He says, like its leader, who is way too young to run a country, North Korea is showing the world its actions are driven by impulse and tantrums. June, is that fair?
I wouldn't say it would be as impulsive as a lot of people think. He did come into his post very, very young, but he has been under the wings of his relatives who have been working with his father while he was leader. Right now, I think he's trying to really stabilize his position as the leader of North Korea's military. Last night, he convened an emergency military meeting with 4 senior military officials. This is the first of its kind. It took place around midnight, and then the state-run media immediately issued a release of the news of what was going on. And what you see in the pictures of Kim Jong-un meeting with the top officials is a game plan that it has. As a lot of you are aware, it's targeting the U.S., the mainland U.S., Hawaii, Guam, South Korea. They had a big plan posted on the wall behind Kim Jong-un showing the strategic forces plan to strike U.S. mainland. That's what it says in Korean. Right next to it, they're trying to show force by listing everything that they have in their arsenal. Basically, they said they have 40 submarines, 13 landing ships, they have 1,852 aircraft. A slew of things were listed to show the world what they have ready, and they're not playing around. But of course, it's all a wait-and-see game.
Well, let's go to the BBC's World Newsroom to speak to some of our colleagues from the language services who are monitoring tweets and comments from around the world.
This is Zhuang Chen from the BBC Chinese. We've got some of those web users, but most of them, I think, surprisingly, although we know China is the main support of North Korea, but what we found on the internet, the public, they overwhelmingly denounce North Korea. So I think they pose a potential threat to the region, given that China is facing increasingly tension from Japan. So I think overwhelmingly the public just pointed finger to North Korea. They are wondering that the tension will be escalated.
And Giang Nguyễn here from BBC Vietnamese service in London. Today is also the 40th anniversary of the US combat troops being withdrawn from South Vietnam in 1973. So on our website and then on Facebook or bbcvietnamese.com, there are lots of comments comparing the war times and what's happening now in Northeast Asia. And some of the comments I have here, like by Thanh Lương from Hanoi, saying North Korea nowadays it looks like North Vietnamese regimes 35 years ago. And there are lots of actually critical views about Kim Jong-un, because that's an evidence that Vietnam has moved on.
Thank you for that. Let's bring in another guest now. Yuan Lee is a South Korean journalist for Global Voices in New York. Yuan, thank you for joining us. What did you make of those comments there from our colleague Xuan Chen talking about many Chinese people saying that they actually oppose what North Korea are doing?
Yes, it's obviously so. Like, once the North Korea causes problem and like United States kind of intervenes and everything kind of goes into this chaotic situation, then China has lots to lose. Like, it could affect like their stock prices and everything, and it is posing this great threat in this East Asia region. Well, it is a very scary scenario.
Well, do stay with us. We're going to take a quick break to we're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll carry on this discussion. You can tweet us if you want to using the hashtag WHYS.
No, I absolutely talking about it. Let me say something. No, I absolutely talking about it. Let me say something.
Welcome back to World Have Your Say. We're discussing these threats from North Korea to have missiles on standby to strike US targets. They're talking about targets in Guam, in Hawaii. Understandably, people are concerned. We're hoping that we'll be able to speak to a blogger from Guam in a few minutes' time. But for now, let me introduce you to the guests who are still with us. We're joined by Yuan Lee, who is a South Korean journalist for Global Voices in New York, June Chang, news anchor at KBS World in Seoul, and Dr. Stephen Norper, who is Senior Vice President of the Korea Society based in New York. Yuan Lee, tell us, what are bloggers and people telling you through Global Voices about this crisis at the moment? Are they more concerned by these latest threats from North Korea?
Yes, well, this threat has been in South Korea. People have been facing this threat for like 60 years, and it's nothing new. But the situation is truly unprecedented. Like, they have this new leader, 30-year-old inexperienced Kim Jong-un, and it seems like nobody is want to talk to North Korea, and like it seems North Korea is truly running out of options, and they played all the tough cards, good cards they can use, and the armistice and ordering those rockets on standby, and it can. But the truly troubling thing is it can push North Korea to act out, to keep up its own word, and try not to lose its face in front of its people, and. Like, one small provocation can lead to a war. That's what people really worried about, because many people don't think that nuclear is for. People think that nuclear is just for negotiation, and what's possible is the artillery barrage. Yeah.
June, you were nodding.
Actually, like she just said, it takes only one provocation. A lot of experts here in South Korea are speculating that due to the rise in the harsh dialogue that's coming out from North Korea, there is most likely going to be a lot of provocations, a lot of perhaps minor skirmishes. As for this morning, like I said earlier, Kim Jong-un held his emergency meeting at about midnight this morning. But then earlier today, there was another incident where it wasn't really publicized in the news, but North Korea had a MiG-21 fighter jet flying near South Korea's frontline airspace, which is known as the Tactical Action Line. And in response, South Korea sent out its Air Force. The Air Force dispatched its KF-16 fighter jets, but luckily, the MiG-21 went back to its base. So there's a lot of these little tit-for-tat games. They're playing cat and mouse a lot, but one little incident, you never know. It could spark a big war, but right now, we're not expecting anything full-blown at the moment, but it's always best to be on guard.
To follow on June, remember that exactly 3 years ago, we had the sinking of the Chonan, where 46 South Korean sailors lost their lives in the West Sea and the Yellow Sea along the northern limit line. And just a few months after that, about 6 months after, there was a shelling of Yongfeng Islands. So these sort of limited conventional attacks are cause for real concern.
Well, it's interesting. Sorry, June, go ahead.
I'm not disregarding that at all. And we just had the anniversary of the Cheonan sinking recently, a couple days ago. Park Geun-hye had called on North Korea to put down its weapons and not provoke the South. So many young lives are missing or being lost because of the North's provocations. So I'm not disregarding the severity of these minor skirmishes, but right now a lot of the experts in South Korea are speculating that North Korea, with all this talk, is probably not going to have a major war break out, but a lot of these smaller provocations will likely happen. They're assuming that. But still, like Hegel said, you never know. You always have to be prepared.
Ewan, do you agree with that?
Yes, you never know what will happen, and these provocations is very scary. And thing is, I think we are in a like kind of screaming match. One start raising voices, and the other like raise the voice even higher, and these things just keep escalating. And one needs to just stop and take a deep breath and lower their voice once in a moment to kind of change the atmosphere.
It's interesting that you're talking about games and provocation. People listening around the world will be thinking, but this is serious. This is a man who potentially has access to nuclear weapons, who could start a very serious war. And you're talking about games and brinkmanship. It's worrying for people watching around the world, Dr. Norpa.
But you actually have both realities. I mean, you have brinksmanship and you have a dangerous game, if you will, but you have a situation that should cause real concern. But it's beyond that. You have the cutoff in the hotlines this week, which is significant because that limits the levels of communication, where there's only a civil aviation hotline in operation at the moment. Interestingly, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, which is a business development effort by North and South Korea, seems to be still operating. It was as of yesterday. So the economic exchange and opening seems to still be there in a limited way. But the real concern is the cutoff of this contact should something happen and should there be a flare-up in hot tensions.
Well, we've talked a little bit about provocation. Let's pull up this comment from Mohammed, who's in Oman, who posts on Facebook. He says, every action has a reaction. What about the main reason for these threats, the US stealth flights? June, do you think it's fair enough to say that the US is in some way stepping this up?
Well, of course they're going to step up their game. South Korea does feel threatened by the North. Last week, we just had a cyber attack that we talked about not too long ago, about how people are speculating whether or not this is provoked by the North. The North Koreans are trying to step up their game in many sorts of ways, whether it's militarily or even through the internet. You never know. Basically, there has been like a lot of movement in North Korea, whether it's at Dongchangli. Intelligence authorities are watching closely, the U.S. intelligence, South Korean intelligence. They're watching the military sites very, very carefully. People are speculating that there might be a test for a long-range missile coming up soon. They're trying to see if there's movements of Scud missiles or the Nodong missiles or the Taepodong. So North Korea is very, very mysterious. We don't know exactly how it's going to make its next move, but we have to be on our feet at all times on all levels.
Let's go back to our colleagues now. I'll come back to you in a moment, Dr. Norpa. I want to go back to our colleagues who are in the BBC World Newsroom, our colleagues from the language services.
Oh, I think in Vietnam, for example, all those North Korean pilots were fighting against the American Air Forces to defend Hanoi during the war, because North Korea has been and remains an ally of Communist Vietnam. But at the same time, Vietnam has become more reliant on South Korean investment. Just 2 days ago, Samsung, the electronic giant, opened a factory near Hanoi of $2 or $3 billion. investment. So it's very important for Vietnam to maintain a balance between the two Koreas. At the same time, people in Vietnam have a great sense of curiosity about the North Koreans because they haven't heard much about them. So I think in late 2011, when Kim Jong-il died and the only North Korean restaurant in Hanoi was shut down for 2 weeks mourning, Facebookers in Vietnam exchanged and shared a picture of that restaurant as a subject of curiosity. So I feel that there are lots of sympathy for the North Koreans because of their suffering under the Kim's regime.
So from the China side, few will doubt China's clout to change North Korea's course. The question is whether Chinese government have the determination or the will to do so. Very recently, there is a change of wind towards from China towards North Korea. I'm not sure if Kim Jong-un did get that sense of the change. For instance, China tightened its rein in terms of its sanctions against North Korea. It voted yes to the UN sanction against North Korea, which is unprecedented. And also, I think China, if they want to do that, they can cut off the supply of oil and food. That's what the Chinese propaganda, the Chinese newspaper proposed a couple of months ago, saying that China should reconsider its stance in the North Korean policy. I think it is a very critical junction, and the only things that hold China back is China's current tension between China and Japan.
Thank you, Zhuang. Dr. Norper, how important is China's role in all of this?
Oh, China's role is hugely significant. China has been, for more than a decade, the primary provider of North Korean fuel and foodstuffs. And so it does have leverage in terms of what's happening there. It's had a fairly steady exchange with North Korea and its leadership, beginning in about 2009, after Kim Jong-il was recovering from an initial stroke. He tried to consolidate that. We've seen visits back and forth. And even last year, Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jeon Son-taek, was visiting with Hu Jintao. The question now is, where will Xi Jinping lead China relative to North Korea? One would expect for the time being, there's no incentive really for China's official position to change. And there's been mention of things like its continued reliance on a strategic buffer with North Korea. But over time, we'll see. You know, there are new pragmatists who are taking hold. There is division among academicians and people in government in China, and there are multiple feelings on what the value of continuing to support North Korea really is.
Dr. Stephen Norper, thank you. Ewan Lee, South Korean journalist for Global Voices in New York, and also June Chang, news anchor at KBS World in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on World Have Your Say. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be speaking about Cyprus. After that EU bailout, the banks have now reopened, so is life becoming easier for people in Cyprus? If you want to join the conversation, you can tweet us using the hashtag WHBanks.
Let me say something.
Hello, I'm Chloe Tilley. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. Well, we're going to return to Cyprus. After the banks have reopened, after that EU bailout, is life becoming a little bit easier for the people there? The conversation is already underway at facebook.com/World Have Your Say.
Talking about it.
Top priority.
I experience.
This is chaos. People are going to want to know. Let me say something.
Well, thank you for being with us. There have been so many people getting in touch with us about this story over the last few weeks. Of course, now Cyprus has secured that €10 billion EU bailout, but it's come at a cost, and it's been hard for many people in Cyprus. Let me introduce you to the guests we have to speak about this story. Let's speak to Panagiotis Pachamio, who is an architect in Limassol in Cyprus. Panagiotis, thank you for joining us on World Have Your Say. I've spoken to you quite a lot over the last few weeks on our radio programme, and it's probably fair to say you've been quite gloomy. Are things starting to ease? Are things starting to become easier for you?
Things do start to become easier for us, and we started looking for diversity and stability, while at the same time we try to find ways in bridging our financial differences with Troika and Eurogroup. That is very important for us in order that we can move forward and find solutions which will be workable for the Cypriot people.
Have you been able to get hold of money? How is life for you at the moment?
Yes, access to money is available, it's easy, but obviously we have to manage and change the way of lifestyle and how we spend our money. So we have to regulate our ways in spending money and obtaining money. We have to be patient with our partners and business associates in order that we find solutions, financial solutions, which will be amicable for all parties involved in this community.
Panagiotis, let me introduce you to Nausicaa Gabrielides, who is also an architect but is in Nicosia and joins us now. Nausicaa, thank you for coming on to World Have Your Say. How is life for you at the moment in Cyprus?
To be honest, you can't really feel anything's changed yet, but we all feel it coming.
Do you have access to money at the moment? How have you been affected by this crisis?
Yes, we have access to money. It's not really about that. We're just far more worried about the long-term repercussions to the economy in general with what's been done.
Elaborate on that. What are your immediate concerns?
Well, the fact that this deal has been struck at such short notice to the average person on the street has come as a shock. And the truth is, once we won't be able to deal with it soon, because the economy is run by Cypriot businesses. As opposed to the myth that it's only Russian money in Cyprus. It's not, it's Cypriot money as well. And it's the whole economy runs through Cypriot businesses who employ people. And we feel like we won't be able to cope. We won't be able to survive. We won't be able to keep people employed. Business is going to run dry. And it's what's coming in the next few months that's really worrying us.
Well, both of you, let me read you this comment which has come, well, it was actually in an editorial today in the Financial Mirror in Cyprus. Let me read it to you. A lot has been said about the persona of some key figures of the Troika who have pillaged our economy and desecrated our sovereignty, but few have had the courage to say, we had it coming. Who wants to respond to that? Nausicaa.
Yes, they're right. They're right on both fronts. We did have it coming. We made a lot of mistakes. Our previous government did things in an unorthodox way, if you will. And there are definitely points that we need to deal with in terms of our culture and our way of thinking. We do need to look inwards as well as outwards. But definitely there is a feeling of why did this happen to us now in such a way? I mean, it's disastrous. It's absolutely disastrous.
Panagiotis, do you think Cyprus had it coming?
Cyprus did have it coming, indeed. Unfortunately, the politicians and the people dealing with the financial institutions here in Cyprus were not forthcoming. It is clear from various events and reports that the corruption has taken place, money being taken out from Cyprus, and the fact that the Central Bank of Cyprus director, the previous director, his vision, it was to export 70% of the cash money in Cyprus abroad. That was disaster policy. We now, Troika, you mentioned Troika earlier. Yes, Troika were negotiated very hard, but that was their job. They were simply doing their job, I believe. In moments like this, you need harsh decisions, and you need people to put you in place. And that's exactly what Troika did. And whilst we welcome the thoughts of Troika, at the same time we're criticizing the way they manage the whole process. And for that reason, we believe there are lessons to be learned.
Nausicaa and Panagiotis, I want to introduce you to Roddy Damalis, who is a restaurant owner in Limassol. And Roddy, I know that you spoke to my colleague Roz on this programme last week. How has the last week changed for you and your business?
Well, for me personally, I'm pleased that we eventually have an outcome and we know the monster that we're dealing with. I, for one, have made the decision not to even go near a bank until such time as systems have been put into place and everybody started breathing and some semblance of normality has entered the equation. So what I'm trying to do is that I've taken it upon myself to actually keep my little world and my staffs and my customers in some kind of a form of normality. So I believe that we need some routine, and we do all need to just calm down because there's been a lot of hype.
And are people starting to visit your restaurant? Is that normality
Indeed.
starting to return?
Indeed, I've been very, very proud and very, very pleasantly surprised at the fact that people are saying, you know what, I cannot sit at home and watch the TV anymore. I cannot listen to the wild speculation that's been flung about so liberally. I'm actually just going to get out and I'm going to sort of carry on my life. And I'm very, very proud of that kind of attitude and that positivity coming through. And I think that does show the spirit of the Cypriot, which I think is what we're going to have to rely on in the future.
Well, there has been some seat shifting in the World Newsroom, and we're joined by some more colleagues from the BBC's language services who are monitoring the conversations about Cyprus. Let's get the latest from them.
I'm Chloe Hadjimatheo. I'm in the World Affairs newsroom, and I've been speaking to Cypriots throughout the last 2 weeks, primarily to my own family. I have an enormous family in Cyprus. Two of my cousins have invested all their savings in shares in the Laiki Bank, which, as we know, has very little likelihood of a future. They have no idea what's going to happen to their savings. I have another cousin who works for the Laiki Bank, and she's terrified she's going to lose her job. Earlier this week, she was crying on the phone to me. She has a daughter at university. She has no idea whether she can continue to fund her daughter's education at university. And today, interestingly, I've been speaking to Cypriot students studying abroad here in London, and they're talking about an entire life plan change because of this crisis. They're saying they were planning on graduating and returning to Cyprus and looking for jobs. They're not going to do that anymore. They're now looking abroad for jobs to the rest of the Eurozone, to northern European countries, which are much stronger. So it's really rocked people's lives, I think, and left them feeling very, very insecure.
Well, I'm Bruno Garces from the Brazilian service, from BBC Brazil. Well, you see, as Chloe mentioned, the situation in Cyprus is somewhat close to home for us Brazilians, because in 1990, I remember it very well because my family itself was affected by it. There was a similar plan in which up to 80% of all the deposits in Brazilian bank accounts were held by the government for 18 months, but then when they were made available again, they had to be readjusted according to the inflation. So everybody lost an absurd amount of money in that transaction. And we reported even on the case of a Brazilian who had fled Brazil during that period over 20 years ago, went to Cyprus, and now has faced the same situation. She's called Monica Rodrigues. She was 2 times unlucky. So it does resonate a lot with us, and we've seen a lot of buzz on our social web, on our Twitter and Facebook accounts. Lots of people interacting with us. Many people have saying, I've seen this before. We've had something similar happening in Brazil and Argentina, and it didn't work there. Why would it work in Cyprus?
Chloe and Bruno, interesting points there. And Roddy, I wonder if I could get a reaction to what Chloe was saying there, that lots of young people especially are reassessing their life choices and saying, is Cyprus the place for me to return to, or indeed try and carve out a career? Is that the sort of thing that you're hearing?
You obviously do hear comments like that, but I think that there are those of us that have decided. I, for one, have done that already. I've been here for 12 years, having left South Africa, and I'm definitely digging my heels in and believing that I would like to contribute to fixing this whole story. But it's not going to fix up in any way if we all start fleeing. So I do believe that we do need to come back, bring our knowledge, bring our experience, and put it back into our country so that we can contribute to its success in the long run.
Roddy,
and there are a lot of us that feel that way.
Roddy, thank you for joining us on World Have Your Say, and best of luck with your restaurant in Limassol. Thank you to so many people getting in touch with us. People getting in touch from Jamaica, Gambia, Ghana, Bangladesh, US, Cameroon, Tanzania. The list is too long to go into, but thank you ever so much for getting in touch. Don't forget, you can, of course, tweet us using the hashtag WHYS, and we'll carry on talking in the next few minutes.
No, I absolutely talking about it. Let me say something. No, I absolutely talking about it. Let me say something.
Hello and welcome back to World Have Your Say. We're talking about the situation in Cyprus, the EU bailout. The banks have now reopened, but is life becoming easier for people in Cyprus? Let's go back and speak to our guest Nausicaa, who's an architect in Nicosia. We were hearing just before the break comments from our language services that many people in Cyprus, young people, are thinking, is this the future for me? Do I want to return to Cyprus? I know that you're pregnant. What do you think about your child? Do you see their future in Cyprus?
Well, you have to wonder. It's my second child, actually, and you've got to have faith. You know, we're a strong country, we're strong people, we work very hard, we're educated, highly skilled, professionals, so we'll get there. I've got to be positive about that.
Nausicaa, let me introduce you to Mark Stockfish, who joins us from Berlin. He's a lawyer there. Mark, thank you for joining us on World Have Your Say. I have to say, we've talked about this a lot on our radio programme over the last few weeks, and of course here on BBC World News. And there's been quite a lot of anger targeted towards German people and Angela Merkel, your Chancellor. You're frowning there, but people aren't happy that Germany is putting such a squeeze on Cyprus to secure this bailout. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm also unhappy with the bailout in Cyprus. It shows again that tighten our belts here in order to give money to another state will only give us one thing. They hate us and call us Nazis. And the same happened in Greece. And I think it would be better to let the states which are deeply indebted by their own fault go into bankruptcy. You know, that this could offer opportunities for stronger healing. They would have the chance to reform by choosing their own means, and thus they can retain their dignity. I don't like that our Chancellor Merkel only follows the logic of financial markets. This undermines democracy and as we see the European idea. Although it's more difficult for a state to recover with a common currency, but it's more difficult than with its own currency. But it would make clear to the financial markets that every state is responsible for its own budget.
OK, Mark, well, let's get Panagiotis to respond to that. You should have been left alone. Cyprus should have failed and gone bankrupt.
I believe what I hear just now is there are fortunate comments coming from another citizen of this big club called Europe. As a united Europe, we have to work together. We have to put our differences together, and we have to put our political inspirations not to try to impose into another country. It's true that Germany has been named as one of the countries not supporting Cyprus the way it should, but we have no hate either to German people or to politics. This is a simple way of accepting various decisions. I didn't hear the word Nazi from any Cypriot people calling the Germans, so it'd be interesting to hear how that came across.
Well, Panagiotis, you say that you haven't heard that, but certainly we know of reports of there have been posters put up of Angela Merkel around Cyprus with a Hitler moustache on. Those have appeared in Cyprus. But Mark, speak directly to Panagiotis. Explain to him your position.
Yeah, well, hello, Panagiotis.
Hello, Mark.
Greets from Berlin. Yeah, I'm glad that you think we are not Nazis and you are not angry about the German people. And have you heard my commentary before?
I have, Mark. Yes. One thing you should know, Mark, is that while it's snowing in Germany and in the northern Europe today, here in Cyprus it's sunny. And that's how it's going to stay.
Yeah, that's nice. I would like to come to you, and I like it also sunny.
Yes.
Nausicaa, respond to what Mark is saying, that why should hard-working German taxpayers again bail out another country? They've already bailed out Greece, Portugal, Spain, Ireland. He's working hard, Germans are saving, but they're having to pay money out.
I've got a question back. Why should hardworking Cypriots who've put a lifetime of savings into a bank pay for this as well at the same time? Because at the end of the day, what went wrong has not been the fault of the masses in Cyprus. Most of us are either working hard, we're paying our taxes, we're good citizens, you know, we try to get education for our kids, food on the table, etc. Some of us have done very well in the business world of Cyprus, legitimately, and nothing to do with Russians at the same time. And we're being made to pay for it at a very high cost, because don't forget, Laiki Bank has gone bankrupt and they are closing it down. Whatever you had above 100,000 is gone. You could have had 5 million, you could have had 10 million, you could have had 1 million. It's gone. You know, that's something that's really hard to accept
as citizens of Europe. We have to unite together to fight everything together. And as unfortunate Mark feels, and other Cypriot people perhaps feels, that Germany is the main cause for all these troika's decisions. So we have to sacrifice for the benefit of other Europeans. And let me remind you something. Remind that the reason that the first resolution was turned down by the parliament, it was not just to benefit the Cypriot people, but it was to benefit the investors here in Cyprus as well. So now the second decision...
Panagiotis, I'm just going to jump in, and I hope you'll forgive me. We're coming to the end of the programme, and I just want to let Mark respond briefly, if he could.
Yes, of course.
Mark.
I want to say that at first we have to determine the causes, and the cause in Cyprus is that they have a system that doesn't work. And they have to get back to a system where that can work.
So the system needs to change so that Cyprus can then recover. I want to thank all of you for joining us on World Have Your Say, and thank you so much for all of your comments. I'll speak to you again soon.
Let me say something.